And we're live. Oh, so yeah, what's the topic again? So I'm thinking about freaking yes, debate for the sake of dialogue as opposed to proving a point. Uh, it's far more important, in my opinion, to have dialogue to improve thinking. Because with what I've been learning about uh, the nature of thought and mind, is that it's really pointless and ephemeral, and there's no end to it. There's no definitives. There's no like ultimate thing, and even if you do find some ultimate truth, it's not like the bell rings and you know disappear. You have to keep living. I mean, you can uh, scrape together all kinds of truths and put together all kinds of patterns, but you still have to like continue on. And in a dialogue, it's important because you can develop a way of communication between multiple people that enables more of those moments, which is really what it's about. And it's not, dialogues to prove a point can, I don't know, get the more the dumber idiots of the world to be like, "Oh, look at the fighting, look, they're fighting." But like the nature of dialogue is like it's opinion laden, and even with like truth dripped in there, it still is a intangible thing. And I've been trying to understand like how writers actually write good works, or like what is that creative thing that produces the altered state. And there's something about poetry, like for example, like religion has held this place in humanity for many years of being like an arbiter of truth, and like you got to follow these things to do this to get there. And what I've started to realize is that it's not even really necessary. Like most people are good people, and like most people don't need like like corrections and like psychological freaking manipulation to be decent people. And the thing that interferes the most is ignorance. And ignorance generally comes from a lack of thinking or a lack of contextual uh, evidence, and like contextual opinion to a given situation. Like this whole ride kind of started when it was like, okay, I think the world is broken. It needs to become a better place. And then you're like, well, how do you do that? And most uh, like real spiritual teachers will say, fix yourself. And it's honestly the most true. The problem is we have a very hard time looking back honestly at ourselves, and having an actual honest reflection of what's wrong with us and what's like needs to be fixed. And ew, missed call. Of course, it didn't fucking ring like always. And I fucking hate this piece of shit. Um, the way dialogue works is that you're like, that's how you can improve somebody and the way they see the world without being like, you're a piece of shit and you need to change. Like you can get into a place of dialogue where you will turn their mind into a self-correcting system, because people are not like ignorant and can recognize right from wrong fairly easily. And the way that that's like hindered in our society is like you grow up with like this like overstimulated background noise of like pleasure based gratitude, like junk regurgitation that doesn't actually help you think, and therefore like tap into the self-corrective system that's like built into your mind. And like I think a lot of the time, like most people that are freaking whacked out or insane or like have mental problems like that are simply stuck in like a thought loop that they can't break out of. And like most people will go like have a therapist to help them with that or whatever, but there's a way you can do it with, without therapy and to yourself even. Like what I'm doing here is a good way of doing that for me, because I watch these videos back and sometimes I laugh like, man, you're an idiot. And it's ties into like the last video I did. And like the idea of the moment is there all there is, the immediate now, but it's so ephemeral that what you're really doing is building the past to create the future. And in that process, you're able to identify how, like, y- most conversationalists are speaking at a rate that's actually faster than they can think. And that's what causes like corruption in people's ability to like explain a thought, is like their mind isn't able to think fast enough to think of the things they're speaking about and then analyze what they just said in a congruent line of thought. And what that's I think what our society is missing hugely is like healthy, non-confrontational. You're not trying to prove a point. You're simply having a conversation. And like in doing that conversation, you're going to have the rights and wrongs exposed. You're going to have the like things will play themselves out, and like especially if you rewatch something, you'll be able to analyze like, oh yeah, this is clearly like like this guy wasn't on the ball, or like this point had a greater meaning to it. And like the antagonistic way of like modern life of trying to be an ego and be like, I am right, my experience, my thinking, like does way more harm to the person that's acting like that than somebody who's just like very open, not trying to prove a point, just like observing it all go down. And like in this day and age, like it's so clear that Jesus, this keeps going out. It's so clear that like the pen is mightier than the sword. And not only that, the word is mightier than I. Ooh. the pen is still mightier than the word, but the word is very important. And like, for example, if you're trying to like revolt or change something in the political system or like make changes in the world, you don't even have to actually debate with somebody and like make your voice heard. Like, if you like join with like-minded people and simply just like watching their videos and like, I don't want to say programming yourself necessarily, but like you're like contributing your viewership and attention is just as powerful as like praying 5 times a day or like you know like like going into a church and sit in reverence, or even for example like rioting and protesting. Because like when you're protesting, like you're making your presence felt, and 9 times out of 10, wherever you're making your presence felt, like you're just like an obstacle. Like like if you're gonna go protest on the White House lawn, the people who you're protesting against are simply gonna see it from the news, or like see you on the other side. Not it's like at the White House, it's not even like they gather there, except like maybe the president has like a uh, I don't even think they do this anymore, but you'd be on like the White House lawn and have like a group of people and give a little small speech, and then have what is it? Not Air Force One, the helicopter, that presidential helicopter, just all right, I'm out. Like it, as a protester, trying to make your presence felt in that situation is very like you'd be better off like protesting it where like all this White House staffers go to like dinner and like protesting as they're all inside having lunch, you know, or like shit like that. And like smashing stuff and burning buildings, all it does is like give you a felony, immediately destroy your credibility, and uh, nothing will change from that. Period. Nothing will change, and like you're basically just funding the police department, and like the new era of protest and revolt is much more subtle, and it's not even confrontational. Like you simply just have like dialogues with people, and like uh like you'll gain enough, people don't even have to leave their house or like do anything about it. They just like view and like take in that information, and that like process of thought recognition and like taking in that information informs the collective. And like uh it's very strange. It's very strange, very cool, very cool, very productive, very chilling, and like like realistically, these motherfuckers that revolt with like force generally are looking for power anyways. And like um, power is going to become incredibly diffused and almost meaningless. Like rule by force, whatever, dude. You know, it's kind of like if you have a kid and he's screaming like a brat and throwing a temper tantrum, you just put him in his room and then let it go. And then there's just a person screaming in their room and like thrashing around, and you're just like, do whatever, man. I don't give a shit. That's the way I look at like the power structures now. Is it's like you got to wear a mask and you can't go outside. You have to keep 5 feet of distance. And it's like I'm gonna keep doing whatever I'm doing. and like so much of law and like um rules and regulations and stuff is totally just like uh ham-fisted power moves that have no grounding in reality or like, you know, I mean, let's just take like drug laws for example. Like literally all that does is empower like the darker, most like crazy, corrupt, power mongering people in the world, as opposed to like you legalize weed and then there's no more cops beating people about it. There's not arrests happening all the time. That like you're getting tax money from it now, and like I think I even saw a statistic that like college people started going to college more. It's so ridiculous, and I find that absolutely hilarious that pot smokers are freaking like, let's go to college now, man. I'm down to go to college now. Let's go think about stuff. Oh, what a trip. And like the whole ham-fisted power game is an illusion. It's like purely like it holds no actual power. ah, ugh. But the thing is like you can't. So the power may only be ephemeral, but you can't overcome it by force. You have to like fight it with the same tactic of like lengthy, peaceful, legal like banter. This is like an interesting thing I've noticed is like uh, do the crime and then have a lawyer and then do your case out and follow the legal path and don't be like, all right, I'm gonna do the crime and then like get into a police chase and shoot a cop and like literally throw your life away when like do the crime, you get caught, you go to court, you fight it. Like 9 times out of 10, it's literally you get let off with like uh you just have a process now. Because it's not like they can just like gulag, That's kind of like the glory of America is like that it's like free and not only that, but like the policing is like regimented and like there's no need to like be an animal and freaking like endanger other people and like it's not like Britain in the 80s or like the 70s where they're like freaking you know London cops out there with like batons beating people at concerts and like tossing them out and stuff like that. Like it's weird. Like it's much more standoffish and like you got to fight with your intelligence. Like we're all smart enough now that you don't need to be like ham-fisted. Like you literally just freaking be a decent human being, pay the price when it happens, and then like move on. And that same kind of thinking will do way more damage than like protesting. Like I would, if I was ever going to protest and like organize a protest, I'd be like, all right, we're gonna all chip in and then fight this with a lawyer. Like I don't know how that actually works. Like if you could challenge a legal precedent by the state with a lawyer, but like that is so much more effective because like the way the legal system works seems to me is like you have to follow a way of dialogue that like there are certain like pathways and then if there's like a dispute you go off of like a legal precedent And then that precedent will be like, all right, well, this happened, so you, sir, are incorrect. And then boom, boom. And then eventually you get down to the end and like through this flow chart of laws, and you eventually reach like oh, this is not legal to do by the government. You have to throw it out. And like that's the only way to truly protest now is like you have to put brains against brains instead of being like a bunch of dumb animals and like smashing shit up. Like there is a time and a place for that, without a doubt. But like if you're gonna just like aimlessly like, smash windows out of the library and stuff, like, you know, the police almost expect you to like light the station on fire if there's like a protest in a place like a city that's like you got people really raging, and like directing your will like that uh has like if it's directed at the right stuff and it's not like just taking out like businesses that are totally unrelated. Well, let's say like this, like, okay, so you're having a protest about your wages at Home Depot, and like the freaking owner of the Home Depot sends out like a bunch of police. I would freaking be like, all right, and then the next protest, just burn it down. Because like at that point, you're fighting force with force. Like, and that's the thing is like, you don't really want to put yourself in that situation, but like the idea of like just making your voice heard does absolutely nothing. Like use your like state given civic power and like call your senator up and like speak to the governor and freaking give a speech like on the floor of the freaking the I don't know, the state senate. Like that is so much more effective than like getting a felony for like arson and just pissing away like 5 years in the pen. And like yeah. But this is my point is like dialogue is so much more powerful than like any show of force or violence, because you're using like logical deduction to reach a point. And like the only reason the rich and powerful get their freaking like uh um predatory laws put in is because they hire a bunch of people that are smart enough to write it smart enough and push it through. And like just as easily lay people can do the same thing and get benefits for themselves in, but like as a general rule, like we're so divided as a nation and nobody has any idea how to use their brain to get things done that they just like watch it happen, complain, nothing changes. And it's kind of like there's literally no point in complaining if you're not actually trying to like actualize any sort of change. Like, I mean, dude, the Palestine Gaza thing is such a freaking great example. Like, absolutely nothing is like really been happening. Like, there's a bunch of like peripheral fires happening around it, but there's no like progress there. I'll never understand that situation. It's really like the freaking Nazis have paid like secular Israelis to be dickheads. And yeah, I think I gotta do dinner now. So give me a second here. Un momento.